As you drive across the Australian outback to continue sightseeing the beautiful landscape, your engine blows and you immediately pull over. You get out, pop the hood, and realize you can't fix it and nightfall is coming. You'll have to camp out and wait till the morning to start looking for help. As night descends upon the land, the creatures come out. The sounds of roars, buzzing insects, and howls echo throughout the night. But all of a sudden, silence. After a minute of nothingness, you hear rustling coming from the trees nearby. You can't see anything, but it sounds like something that is coming closer. Is it a serial killer, the censorship board, or one of the many creatures that want to kill you that live in the outback? Find out on another terrifying episode of Punk Rock Horror Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Punk Rock Horror Podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Cody.
And today, we are here to remind you to just drink water. Just keep yourself hydrated. Take care of yourselves, people.
I know, especially with the topic we're talking about, it's so hot.
It's hot.
We need a lot of water where we're going.
It's hot.
It's so hot.
I guess unless you're in Alaska. I actually don't know if Alaska is traditionally always cold.
For the most part, I guess.
I don't know if it's not really xenophobic. I just don't know.
Xenophobic?
Well, not because xenophobia is all about being against somebody if they're from a different country and not really their race. And so it's kind of I feel like somehow that would add into it me just assuming that Alaska is always cold.
It's like Canada.
Yeah.
It's just America's Canada.
It's America's Canada.
I don't know.
We're here to remind you that Alaska is America's Canada.
I don't know. I'd like to go to Alaska.
I would too. I
really
worked with a
wanna
guy once who, even in the snow, would still walk around in shorts because he preferred the cold. And he's like, I want to live in Alaska. And I'm like, I think Alaska's made for you. I'm pretty positive.
I still do
they
that
have you
now.
in mind.
I was like, I still do that. I walk around in shorts in the snow.
I don't.
I do.
I don't.
I like the cold.
I'm a wuss.
I like to be warm, okay?
I like to be snuggled, but not too warm, but warm enough.
Like a nice hug.
like a good, cool, refreshing hug. That's not too cold either, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're back at it again. Changes happening to the show. A few things just to kind of talk about really quick. Our patrons are already aware of this, but we have actually returned to hosting the Half Hour Power.
Yeah.
So yeah, the decision was basically made because Lala and TG are now on their own show, and it's just helping us out. So we get to a point to come back to the Half Hour Power, and that's why Lala jumped on, and so no time has passed, and we're back on our footing. We're going back to the Half Hour Power hosting it, and we're changing it up a little bit. So instead of, normally we had it where Lala would kind of go back and critique things that we talked about in prior episodes, what we're doing instead to change it up is that we're still going to be doing short, scary stories at the end of each episode, but me and Cody are actually going to use these Half Hour Power episodes to talk about TV shows, comics, movies, video games, books,
all kinds of stuff that's horror related that we feel is there's too much to put on our main show because how we have to talk about it, TV shows, for instance.
Exactly.
Or there's a movie where we really enjoyed it, but we feel like it wasn't strong enough to be on the main episode, so we'll talk about it stuff on here.
Yeah, exactly.
And, not on here, on the Patreon.
Yeah, well, basically what we don't have time to talk about on here, we just jump straight into on our Half Hour Power episode.
Yeah.
We don't really do any of our other segments. We just straight go into talk about what we talk about. The most recent one that has come out or is coming out. Yeah, no, because this episode coming out on Tuesday. So yeah, the episode that's coming out, we actually talked about Hannibal, the TV series, and talked about why we liked it. Talked about some of the issues that at least I have with it, but it's really nothing to really deter any away from it. But yeah, it's just really great talk, and it's what it's going to be. Half Hour Power is going to focus on specific things in horror that we don't really get to talk about, or that is kind of hard to talk about on Tuesday episodes when they're not within that same theme.
Yeah.
So coming back to it as well, before we jump into our game today, just want to give another quick shout out. So a few friends of ours who are also content creators and streamers are actually hosting a charity event on the 22nd of this month. So next Saturday, or depending when you're listening to this coming Saturday, it's called Heathens Helping Humanity charity stream. It's going to be a 12-hour live stream for charity to support people in need at the moment. The charity itself will be to raise money for St. Jude's Hospital. It's for a great cause. It's just a bunch of hilarious dudes playing video games, raising money. So please check that out. We're actually going to have those links in the episode notes below to where you can tune in for that. It's going to be hosted and ran by Heath and Skip, Art of the Crow, Superbeast, and Captain Deathclaw. So make sure you check them out. We'll have links for each streamer's channel below as well. And again, it's going to be happening all day on the 22nd. So please, ghouls, gals, creeps, and mutants, tune in. It's for a great cause. Even if you can't tune in for the whole time, at least consider jumping in to donate to help raise money for this very great cause. And yeah, so jumping into it, to talk about what we're talking about this Friday, which again, I owe everybody a huge apology. I am sorry I did not post the listener participation corner in time. Half the reason...
Honestly, it's kind of my fault because... So to give a little context, we were going to do a special episode that tied into our last ones with Richard Ramirez.
Yeah.
But I want to give the subject matter real justice and like really dive into it so I can give you guys like as much of an unbiased opinion and just research as possible.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to it, so I kind of told Matt, I'm like, hey, so we're going to change the subject at like midnight. And because I didn't have enough time to really do the research justice, so we picked a topic that we're pretty familiar with instead, and we're like, oh, it's a little too late now. So it's my fault.
It's a little on both ends, honestly. You could have still gotten one out in time, and so do apologize, but. Mm-hmm. We're actually going to be talking about instead, so that way we can get more research done for the satanic one.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Satanism. Yeah, that'll be next time.
Yeah, that'll be for our next episode. What we're talking about this time, though, is Australian horror. So we're going to be talking about in the history of horror films made in Australia, how that went down, some of the censorship issues that they ran into. There's going to be a lot of that.
We're going to talk a lot about that.
Before we jump into that, we're going to play our horror game. And so I was thinking, what would be a really good horror game that like is within the same theme of Australian horror? What could it be? Like, how would you survive in the desert? Would just be really boring. Like, how would you survive an alligator attack is too cut and dry. So instead,
I wouldn't.
So let it happen. Way to go out, man.
I just had to avoid the water. But like, yeah, look at that log over there. You know what? I bet it has eyes and teeth.
We would be those dudes in that video with that one guy who elbow drops the alligator to save his friend. Yeah. I'd do that for you.
Oh, good to know.
Good to know. Suplex!
Oh my God, get the chair. He nearly broke him in half.
So here's my game. I'm going to call it, it's called What is the Creature Feature? So, or we can just call it Creature Feature and make it short. So everybody knows that the biggest joke about Australia that's really attached to it is that Australia well, at least the outback in the wilderness is out to kill you.
Everything is out to kill you.
Everything is out to kill you. So
even if they can't, they're still trying.
So, Cody, you're a filmmaker, and you're going to Australia to make your next creature feature.
Okay.
Now, there have been movies made about alligators. Yeah. There have been movies made about crocodiles, pigs, snakes,
lions,
even bears.
Yeah, and bears.
So, you cannot pick any of those, but what creature are you going to make a horror movie about that lives in Australia?
Oh, koala.
Okay, how would you make it?
I go with the koala.
How? What would
okay,
you, like,
so
and you can have fun with it. It doesn't have to retain its size.
No. So no, it's keeping its size.
Okay.
But it's gonna be a horde. So they're being attacked by like a group of evil koala bears, and so like, and how it's gonna start off too. It's gonna. I don't want the nighttime one. You're gonna see it coming. I want to start off with a bang.
Just so, like an army of them coming over a hill.
Yeah, like World War Z, just koala bears going.
Just like that scene in Lord of the Rings where like Gandalf comes back as the White Wizard,
and
he has that whole
koala bear.
It's the whole army just. Like,
no, see how I want to start it off is it's going to be, you I feel like you need it to start off with just one of the scientists that are super curious, like researching koala bears.
Like it has to be like a Nazi Australian scientist.
Yeah, it's going to be one, he's like, yeah, and I will use the koala bears to take over the world. And he's just like,
we shall take over the world
with
mate.
all these
But keep in mind,
koala bears.
He's Australian, so he's got still like.
Oh no!
Australian
See, he's
lingo.
the one non-Australian person, and it's just again because everyone loves watching a Nazi die, so he has to go. And so he's down there, and like you'll see him like climbing the trees, and of course it's in a place where they're like, no, don't go there. There's something bad there, and he's like, I know, I created it. And so you see him climbing up the like fucking the eucalyptus tree, and he's up there, and all of a sudden you just hear. And he's just like, what is this? And then you just see the koala like, Gah! And like one attaches to his face, and then you see like 4 more just attached to the rest of his limbs, and they just tear him apart up in the tree.
No, it's also no.
Unsign. And then it'd just be like a group of 5 koala bears like all of a sudden ransacking like the outback.
Well, then it'd be funnier because like the Nazi scientist is like jacked up on like his own like chemical drug, right? And so because they eat them, they get it in their system, so they become like far more cognitive, and more like organized.
And then all of a sudden, one of them like just starts being able to talk, and it's like, we're gonna take over the world, mate.
There's gonna be one that like they're gonna be in like the gift shop. There's gonna be like all the toy koalas, and one of them is just gonna be pretending to be one. He's just like, Mommy, want this one? I'm like, good day, mate.
It's like, not today.
Just like rips off the kid's face. Oh my God, Mom!
So yeah, I would do evil koalas.
Nice.
What would be your creature feature?
So hold on.
Bless you.
Excuse me. That's on recording now. So mine would be actually, I kind of went in the same realm of like the more least suspecting you would think.
Yeah,
but
even
I
though
feel
koala bears are assholes.
But I feel it'd be more warranted just because they are actually notoriously known to be very territorial is ostriches.
Okay.
Yeah,
An ostrich, not an emu?
Well, actually, I have no idea if ostriches live in Australia.
I can't remember. I know one. I feel like one's in Africa and the other one's in Australia.
I'm gonna look it up really fast. I'm gonna have to change mine. Do ostriches live in Australia? Like, I know somebody's like, no, they don't, or yes, they do, you moron. Oh, it's native to Africa.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I thought.
So, well, hold on, but a very small number of them also call Outback South Australia home. So, take that, whoever was being mean to me in that moment, in your face.
There's gonna be one person. Still doesn't fucking count.
I mean, but why would I fucking know that?
I know.
Anyway, so it's gonna be about an ostrich, right? Mm-hmm. But it's gonna be in the realm of like it's a little like kid ostrich who watches his mama ostrich get like killed by poachers. So he just like snaps. So like he goes like kind of like the realm of like the Punisher, right? Like it's like a whole
starts
like
kicking the shit out of people to death.
just like kicks down doors and just like it's just like, oh my God, that ostrich kicked out the door and looks to him and he somehow is able to like manufacture and use an M4. And just like, just like starts lighting people up, man. And so like it'll be funny because like they'll be like, oh my God, I know how we can stop the ostrich. We made this supersonic weapon that can hurt its ears. And so they'll like start using this supersonic weapon. And the ostrich is just like, wah! And like creates a hole in the ground and puts its head in it.
Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, I forgot about that.
Why would I think that this would work? Why am I so dumb? And so like eventually like our movies are gonna cross over. Because the ostrich is eventually going to, like, organize the rest of its ostrich family.
Just be a giant civil war between koala bears and ostriches.
There'll be this, like, little town of people, and on one side it'll be koalas, the other side will be ostriches, and it'll just be, like, this most brutal fight ever.
Just imagine koala bears jumping out of the trees on ostrich necks and, like, ripping them off. Ostriches just kicking the shit out of koalas.
It's just, like,
they
headbutting.
punch them across the fucking battlefield.
There's, like, one scene where, like, one ostrich grabs a the neck of the other. And they start doing that like move in every kung fu movie where that one dude just like walking and like hitting dudes as he's being lifted up, you know, in a whole circle.
And then all the koala bears would at some point like form one giant massive koala bear and just start smashing everything.
Like for koala try. And then it has to do the whole anime like transformation scene. It's like Kuno Matari walk. It's like lightning is striking in the background, and they're just like pull out like a koala sword. And then the ostrich is like, tick for ostrich bot. It's a giant ostrich that has like I don't know, like a whip or something. It's like its weapon.
No, its thighs are just like extra thick.
Yeah, they have like pistons and like, you know, mufflers coming out and whatnot, and it just like runs super fast and tackles. That's the movies that we need to make.
That's the Australian movie.
We need to have a production company and make these 3 movies that no one will watch.
I'll watch them.
We'll watch them. Our listeners will watch them. And then we're gonna end up on Kevin Smith's podcast. He's gonna be like, "So where did the inspiration come?" And I was like, "Look, man, you drew the line when you did Tusk."
Yeah, it's like you literally took a joke you had and made a movie that we enjoy. So we wanted to.
You made it okay. We just heard the call and decided to go overboard with it. So jumping into it, then going into articles. Talking about what's happening in news and talking about Kevin Smith.
Yeah, I was like, speaking of Tusk.
So, Kevin Smith does say that Tusk 2 is possible and teases the idea for the sequel storyline. So,
oh my God.
You might know that we actually did review Tusk a little while back last year.
Yeah.
And it was definitely one of the more controversial topics of horror films, whether it's good or not.
I just think
the horror community.
So what I find really funny about the fact that he's talking about doing a Tusk 2 is when I saw him and Jason Mewes live for their podcast, like he talks about Tusk and how he actually tried to disown it so much in the beginning. Like he hated that movie and then he's like, you know what? There's a lot of fanfare now for it. I think I'll make a second. Like it's just like the fact that he went from I hate this to holy crap, people actually like this movie now. All right, cool.
Well, to go a little more into it, so during a Twitch session, Smith did explain the idea for the potential of it. He basically went on to say, I'm shocked we got away with Tusk 1, but I'll be honest with you, I do have a story for Tusk 2, Smith revealed. The great Michael Parks, who played Howard Howie, or the guy who turned Wallace into a walrus, sadly passed away a couple of years ago. Amazing actor that I got to work with twice, but in the ending of Tusk, if I wanted to be a commercial filmmaker, which apparently I've never wanted to be, I would have ended the film with Guy Lapointe comes in and raises his shotgun and you just hear the walrus scream and we cut to black. Mm-hmm. He continued on saying there's a version of Tusk 2 that you do where you cut to the present and somebody else gets sucked into the spider's web. The house, you hear stories, and when you get to the house, the new Howard Howie is Wallace, who has gotten out of the walrus trappings and stuff and is obviously disturbed by his entire ordeal and is now doing it to the others. So there's a way to do Tusk 2 where Justin becomes Michael Parks' character, Wallace becomes a sort of the new Howard Howie. So yeah, that's possible. Tusk 2 is possible. Obviously, I thought about it. That's how he quoted and was saying. So not much is really known about it, but he is teasing the idea. So if you are actually a fan of Tusk, then this is something to be excited about. And if you are not a fan of Tusk, sorry to ruin your day.
I'm not.
But going into things that aren't so walrusy, but more dino-y. There we go. Yeah, I should have said more prehistoric.
Yeah, we're still talking about our creatures.
We're totally gonna put a shining on like dinosaur horror games whenever it comes up. I mean, not many other people talk about it in my opinion, so that's why I'm always kind of glad that we're gonna talk about it on the show. But anyways, Jaw Drop Games Kickstarter campaigns for their Dino Crisis-esque Death Ground, which has kind of been going around right now, and well, good news is they've actually have met their funding goal and has finished up with just over 118,000 euros in pledged funds. I am so gassy today. Everybody, I am sorry. This means that the last-minute stretch goals were met, and as a treat, Jaw Drop Games audio designer Graham Schroeder has released a short video that briefly does cover the sound design of Death Ground and a little more other stuff. As for what's next, though, not much is known for the game at this moment. They did reach out to a few, publishers and whatnot talking about the game, and went to a few interviews talking about it, but still not much is really known about the game. All that we know that it is a Dino Crisis-esque type of dinosaur horror game. It's called Deathground, and honestly, man, like, I just feel like there is this really weird surgence of horror video games focused on dinosaurs that are mostly going on PC, and I really
want some console ones, man.
I want to see some of these start going to consoles. I mean, if it does great on PC, they will probably, put it back on consoles and set it up for that. But
yeah, I want some more dinosaur stuff. Like, as much as I love zombies, I don't know. I feel like the dinosaur horror market has just not been touched on in recent years with video games. But, like, I just feel like as cool as it is, like, we're starting to kind of see more dinosaur games. It's like, oh, but it's only for PC, for PC. And it's like, come on, us console people would love it too. I want that new Left 4 Dead style dinosaur game, and I want the new Dino Crisis game.
And as you say that, we just slowly hear everybody who's a PC master race just laughing in the background.
Yeah, they're just like, and I'm like, gosh. I got Spider-Man.
Yeah. I heard you guys just got Horizon Zero Dawn. Way to get to the party, lame-os.
Nerds.
The game came out a while ago. Dorks.
God. But yeah, no, I'm excited for it, and I hope it like all comes onto the consoles too, because like Ark is alright.
Ark is Ark.
Yeah, it's Ark.
If you played Ark, you know what Ark has to offer, and it's Ark.
Yeah, and it's just I just want more dinosaurs. I also would like to play one where you are the dinosaur eating people. Give me another Rampage game.
Right. Oh man, I feel you. We gotta hope, because we've talked about a few of them, and report on a few of them. So hopefully something comes of it.
Yeah.
To it going to consoles. In sadder news, when it comes to horror video games, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has been yet again delayed, but this time to 2021. The teams explained that the delay in a message posted to Twitter recently, saying that their goal has been to deliver the best game possible and worthy successor to the original Bloodline games. As a result of the expectations, however, we have made a difficult decision that we need more time. This means our goal to release in 2020 is no longer possible. Moving launch is one of the changes we are making to ensure the best player experience possible. No new specific release date has been confirmed for the game. It once again makes sense that Heartsuit and Paradox would make this decision, just because, I mean, we've all said it before, take time on stuff that matters, really make it good. It sucks that it's being delayed, but I mean, it is going to be expected for PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. So it will be on most current consoles besides Switch. Sorry, Nintendo. But I will say, if none of y'all have played it yet and you'd like something to hold you over, it's not the exact same, but it does fill the need. Is Vampire. It's a great game.
Yeah, I just downloaded it, so I'm super stoked to get on that.
Yeah,
I was looking forward to it like way back when, and like one of the things that's super exciting for me, I'm like, Matt played it before me, and I was following that game, but then I just like stopped caring at one point, and you're like, yeah, it's fucking awesome. I'm like, I know, I want to play it.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I know.
But so I mean, it's not exactly like Bloodlines, but it does like fill that like kind of like need, like that one
that
from like
true
the first
vampire
game.
game.
Yeah. It has its issues, but it's still a good game. But yeah, not much else is known about it. Hopefully soon we'll get an actual like month date, but expect it this coming next year. So yeah, I mean that sucks, but it's I mean, what can you do? I'd rather have a good game that doesn't have any issues than an okay game that has a lot of issues.
Yeah,
Bethesda.
I was gonna say, honestly, like when I hear like delays in the games and stuff like that, especially games like Cyberpunk and even Masquerade Bloodlines, I am so done and fucking over the day one patches just to fix a game that they rushed out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I hear delays, like I'm more relieved than anything anymore. Like, cause I'm just like, cool, now I don't have to download a 60 gigabyte game and then a 100 gigabyte a day one patch just the day it fucking comes out because it's a broken mess. Like,
I feel
take the time, just do it. Take the delays to fix your games. Like, this is perfect time to fix them.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it.
Well, to help, hopefully this will help make everybody feel a little better who was on the vampire train. A legendary new Dracula graphic novel featuring Bela Lugosi's likeness will be released coming this October 6th.
Sweet.
So, for the first time, the cover art for this is actually really, really great. It is legit Bela Lugosi. It's the whole black and white Dracula that we are used to, the universal monster. It's perfect. It is just right at home. And going unquoted saying recently, for the first time ever, Bram Stoker's gothic masterpiece is being united with the definitive screen Dracula. Bela Lugosi in an all-new graphic novel. In the late 19th century, Dracula, an ancient Transylvania vampire, moves to England to find fresh blood and spread his evil contagion. There he encounters two women, Lucy and Mina, who become the targets of his dark obsession. Aided by a group of brave men, Professor Von Helsing arrives on the scene and takes on the vampire prince in the ultimate battles between the forces of light and dark. You can expect to get this graphic novel October 6th, so it's at most, it's definitely at least a collector's item just because of the cover art alone. But also, again, it's just like, it's a good retelling of a classic tale. So if you're a fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula or Bela Lugosi's Dracula, now these two amazing legends are somewhat coming together, so check it out, October 6th.
I hope if it does well, I honestly hope they kind of do all the original Universal monsters in graphic novel form. I feel like just with the slow burn of those old movies, they would be perfect for comics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because I went back and watched the original Wolfman not too long ago, and like, just it's still really good, and I feel like it holds up pretty well. But like, I definitely see if this takes off, like does really well, can see it in a comic, and it would be so great.
Right.
So
yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Especially because, you know, the Dark Universe didn't take off.
So speaking of monsters that we're glad that are actually being replaced, so in the wake of the sexual harassment allegations towards Chris D'Elia, who's actually been reported with, acting in, terribly towards underage girls, I will let you put the pieces together there. I recommend you look it up yourself just because it's a disgusting subject matter, and that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about, though, is the amazing Tig Notaro has actually been selected to replace Chris D'Elia for the upcoming Zack Snyder zombie movie, Army of the Dead.
hell yeah.
So, I mean, a little biased, I will fully admit, because I'm a fan of Tig Notaro, because that makes me laugh all the time. The Netflix movie is already completed, but they're actually bringing Tig in and are going to be reshooting the scenes that Chris D'Elia was in.
Pull to Kevin Spacey?
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, so,
God, I love Zack Snyder.
Yeah, Zack Snyder's great, Tig Notaro's great. Chris D'Elia can go fuck himself.
That's fucking tight. I love that.
So, went on quoted being saying, due to the actors already being dispersed post-filming and due to the pandemic restrictions, the incorporation will be a combination of techniques from actually reshooting scenes opposite an acting partner to using green screen and CG technology to blend her in. The movie takes place in Las Vegas. Snyder explains the plot. A zombie plague hits Vegas and they are able to contain the virus to the city. They build a wall out of shipping containers and then the city falls. And 6 years later, one of the casino owners hires this group of zombie soldiers to go get his money that he left in a safe in the casino. The cast also includes Dave Bautista, Ella Purnell, Ana de la Riguera, Theo Rossi, Huma Kurishi, Garrett Dillahunt, Omari Hardwick, Hiroki Sanada, Raul Castillo, Nora Arnizender, Matthias Schomfinger, and Samantha Wynn, and Rich Cetroni. So I was like, they're really throwing some curveballs for me, man. And I'm not positive how well I landed that one. But yeah, so this is just really great news, and it's also just kind of like a really great win of not letting creepy, gross people get the limelight. And
Yeah.
And kind of also biased and probably is going to go against our credibility. I've never really been a fan of Chris D'Elia anyways. I feel like he's a very bro-centric comedian, and I find that annoying because it just reminded me a lot of really tired out Dane Cook material. So, but that's just me, man. That's some pretty heavy shade I'm throwing, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, from my perspective, when you start doing creepy shit towards underage girls, that kind of leaves you up for a lot more scrutiny that you rightfully deserve, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what's happening in horror this week. Some good, some bad, some oh no, and some what the hell? You know what I mean? Because of Tusk 2 and whatnot.
I know.
So, With that in mind, we're going to go ahead and jump into the main content for today. So, Cody, why don't you intro it in?
Yeah, so today's content, we're going to be talking a lot about Australian horror and kind of the development of Australian horror and like why it kind of feels like it's more of a recent boom and everything in it. Which, funny enough, it really is. So, if we really want to talk about Australian horror, the Australian film industry didn't really take off until the 1900s, but because Australia's always had they've always had a super strict censorship down there. Like always. Horror really didn't materialize in the Australian film industry. So there was like a huge 70-year drought of horror in Australia, mostly because of the strict censorship, because from 1948 to 1968, all horror movies were banned from Australia. They were just like, nope. So a couple of movies, if you're a film enthusiast and you want to check out some really, really old movies, some of the ones, classic horror movies, quote unquote, closest to horror that they have is The Strangler's Grip, which came out in 1912, The Face at the Window, 1919, The Gudea Ghost Mystery, 1921, and Fisher's Ghost, 1924. So mostly a lot of ghost stories and supernatural is kind of like what they try to do. The film that kind of like gave the horror the limelight in Australia that started it off was 1971's film Wake in Fright, which is actually based off a 1961 novel of the same name. And a quick little synopsis is it's about a school teacher who intends to visit Sydney but instead descends into a nightmarish hell of alcohol and violence during a stopover in a country town. It's one of the few movies at the time that really focused on the horror of the outback itself, because there was no supernatural themes or anything like that. It was literally like the land is what drove this person to go mentally insane. And that's kind of like what most of Australian horror was back in the days. And another big reason why horror wasn't big in Australia is because Australia didn't really have a whole lot of ties to horror at the time. Which, funny enough, because Australia used to be a prison, literally a prison continent.
Yeah.
And for, like, you know, British prisoners and stuff like that before it became its own thing. But it was just like, there's all kinds of horror that you could talk about then. But the real biggest thing is...
they don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit it.
Yeah, well, the biggest reason is Melbourne social commentator A.A. Phillips in 1950 coined the term cultural cringe, which is basically a sense of cultural inferiority. Australia felt like, within their film industry, they just felt like America and Europe made the better horror movies.
Yeah.
And they make the better horror movies because, like, you know, in America, Europe has a lot of the whole gothic horror down, and then America coming from European descendants and stuff, like, descent, you know, it brought over all that. And then, of course, the horrors of America in general. Like, there's a lot there that they have. So in Australia, I feel like they didn't.
There's a lot to work with.
But they were still horror movies that were coming around back then. They just weren't really commercially or even locally good. They didn't do very well.
They sucked.
So movies that kind of came out around then that started paving the... But keep in mind, all these movies paved the way for the, like, current Australian horror movies that are fucking awesome.
Right.
But back then, so movies such as Night of Fear, 1973 by genre stalwart Terry Bourke. Bjork. Bourke. He also made the movies End of the Damned, came out in 1975, and Lady Stay Dead, 1982, and The Sabbath of the Black Cat, 1973. They basically went unnoticed in local cinema, and like I said, it was because of the cultural cringe. And then because of that, Australian horror actually started really leaning into the art house scene. So they were like, well, if we can't do it as good as them, we're just gonna make it artsy fartsy.
So they tried going like France's film industry kind of way with their
except with France, you know, they romanticized and they had a lot more free roam with what they can do.
Yeah, we learned that firsthand experiences.
I know. And so, like, because, you know, France, Europe also has a lot. They're open. More open.
They're definitely more open-minded and not as they don't have much of a scrutiny type of outlook when it comes to, like, even nudity, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they're very they tend to have a lot more freedom of speech on that aspect.
Yeah.
Well, not freedom of speech, but freedom.
Freedom,
You get
freedom
what
of
I mean.
choice, freedom of body.
choice. Just
They don't demonize sexuality.
They don't.
So
They're on nipples.
and then on my nipples they hurt when I twist them.
Why does it hurt when I twist them?
The two most notable art house horror themes they stick with the supernatural is Picnic at Hanging Rock, which came out in 1975, and The Last Wave, which came out in 1977. And then who really gets the credit for pretty much like creating the boom of horror movies and horror acceptance, especially internationally, is Anthony I. Gianni. He, like I said, basically single-handedly started the mini boom. Some of his movies include the telekinetic psychothriller Patrick, which came out in 1978. There's two versions of it. I can't remember the time for the second one. Snapshot 1978. Harlequin 1980 and Turkey Shoot 1982. So like honestly the Australian horror movie boom didn't happen until the 80s, and he's one of the biggest reasons just for creating these movies, especially Patrick. I saw that a lot on Amazon Prime when I was looking for my movie.
Yeah.
And then two more noticeable movies that came out at the time is Innocent Prey 1984 and Out of the Body 1988.
How innocent is the prey, though?
I mean, not very.
Probably not.
Probably.
They probably did it.
But what the biggest thing that the 80s brought about for Australian horror is, and why we actually talked about in the beginning, is their monster movies. Like Australia's like, of course, we talked about how everything in Australia is trying to kill you. And this is kind of like the time where they kind of boomed and really leaned into it.
Yeah.
So in the 80s, they had their 1987 croc thrillers Dark Age, and then 1987's The Howling 3. Oh God, that was not a good one.
Oof.
But I mean, it's still part of a very notable franchise. And then the biggest film to really start getting Australian horror on the map is 1984's Razorback, which is basically what Boar is kind of like taken off of. Yep.
You got
It's
me.
all about
You got my
1984's
attention.
Razorback is all about like a giant pig, a razorback pig that literally eats everything in sight, and it's one of the like dark comedies that came out at the time, because Australia does really well with dark horror comedies.
Yeah, they do. I mean, even because even The Loved Ones, when we talked about that one, like
Yeah, it has some moments where you're like,
just
you
like,
know? And then like Wormwood, really fucking great dark comedy horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 90s was really disappointing for horror, and so like there's really not a whole lot to talk about. And then like it just kind of like basically kind of like the 80s or like slasher films for America. You know how like it had this big boom, and then with all the fucking sequel baits like sequels for Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, you know, like it started the decline of the slasher genre. That's kind of what happened in Australia during the 90s. There was just this huge decline in horror, and a big amount of it is the censorship kind of got like redone in 1995. And so that's more than likely why there wasn't a whole lot of horror that came out again. But the 2000s is where Australia's horror scene really, really finds its legs. It started off with 2000s Scream-like thriller Cut, starring Molly Ringwald. It's another like satire, kind of just like I said, like Scream. It's a satire movie about the horror genre and everything, and of course it stars fucking Molly Ringwald. 2005's Wolf Creek started getting like Australia horror on the map. I mean, it brought about the whole Australia's take on the whole based on true stories, based on true events. I mean, there was a lot done before, but that was one of their takes that had a lot of international support and stuff. But for me and Matt personally, I feel like is 2009's Daybreakers.
Oh god, yeah.
That was like one of the big things that got Australian. I didn't even know it was an Australian movie. Like I didn't realize it, but like that really got Australia films
into the limelight, in my opinion, even though we both feel like Daybreakers was a little overlooked.
Oh god,
but-
I still think Daybreakers still doesn't get as much attention as it really should.
No, I agree. Funny enough, like this is like news to me, just because I don't really follow directors like personally and stuff. Like I don't like really research up on them as much, except for these episodes, like where we have to.
Yeah.
But two of horror's most recent influential filmmakers, Leigh Whannell and James Wan, are actually came from Australia and started one of the longest horror franchises, 2004's Saw. Like they
Never heard
started. They basically started the torture porn thing here in America. Was starting off with Saw.
Yeah.
And then they also brought us 2010's Insidious. And James Wan directed the first few Conjuring movies starting in 2013, and is always attached to all their spin-offs. You know, like this all like some of our biggest, most favorite horror franchises came from Australia or from Australian directors. Like it's really fucking cool.
Recognize.
And then I think the most recent movie though that of the Australian film success stories, especially internationally, it has to be 2014's The Babadook. I mean, like it took off great, like big. Everyone loved it. Like most people really loved the movie, and the Babadook like became such an icon that he was attached to the at least Denver's Pride Festival. I think 2015 is when he was attached to it and like made the mascot of it for that year. So how Australia kind of gets around its censorship board, especially for now times and stuff like that, is you're gonna find most of their greatest horror in their independent scene. How they get around is because it's independent scene, you go to film festivals and stuff like that where there's not as much censorship for them.
Yeah.
So I talked a lot about the censorship, so I kind of have to talk about like what their whole entire censorship thing is. Censorship in Australia is called classification, and material, though technically being given an advisory rating, can officially be refused classification, which results in the material being banned from sale, exhibition, etc. The system also has several levels of restricted categories prohibiting sale, exhibition, or use of some materials to those who are under a prescribed age. Censorship of video games and internet sites hosted in Australia are considered to be the strictest in the world. Australia is a federation, and responsibility for censorship is divided between the states and the federal government. Under the Australian Constitution, the federal parliament has the power to make laws relating to communications and customs. Under the communications power of the federal government can regulate the broadcast media, television, radio, online services, the internet, and under the customs power, the import/export of printed matter, audiovisual recordings, and computer games. The production of, sale, and printed matter, audiovisual recordings, and computer games solely within Australia lies with the states. So, basically, how Australia's censorship advisory board goes to is it all goes down to each state individually. So each place individually can say, no, that's not allowed here, yes, that's allowed here, but the federal government gets the final say in all of it. That I think that started in 2005. They made a thing to where if anything that's being exported, imported, or anything along those lines, is that the federal government gets the main say.
It kind of sounds like it's like you went to the store and you got a game, and now you have to see if your mom approves of it.
Basically, that's basically what it is.
All right, okay.
And so it's
Sorry,
just
everybody that has to deal with that.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I understand. That's from my understanding, that's kind of what it is. Like the states are like, all right, we're gonna bring this in. Hey, mom, is this okay? And then it's just a bunch of old people that go, nah.
I don't understand what that is.
Yeah. And I know a good chunk, probably, a good chunk of the censorship in Australia comes from the fact that, like, they really do believe violence is taught. And so, like, they had this, I know Jim Jeffries talks about a joke in, when he talks about gun rights, especially in America, how in Australia, there was this giant mass shooting massacre, and the government said no more guns, and so the people were like, okay. and he said there hasn't been, like, stuff like that around in I don't know how long. Like, I didn't research that part. But, like, I know it has something to do with that. And then I know from Zero Punctuation, Yahtzee, he talks about how ridiculous, like, the
censorship boards are and how like finicky it can really be. I mean, like the censorship for Left 4 Dead was so bad just because of the cover art. Because the cover art for Left 4 Dead 2 has had the zombies hand pointing at the camera, like
and
with
they
the fingers.
had to like change it.
They had to change it because that means fuck you in Australia, so they had to change it to where its hands were like behind.
Which, like,
So-
okay, fine, we'll give you that one.
So basically, Australia's really, really touchy with what it shows.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why the horror genre never really blew up in Australia until they could start like sending it out internationally and everything. So yeah, that's kind of like Australia's horror scene wrapped up in a little bundle. Australia's movie scene really is actually kind of new. Its horror genre is new. Yeah, it's like, oh, well, it's been 20 years now. But it's like, there's like, it's still pretty kind of under the radar in my opinion. Like outside of like the big like silver screen Blumhouse productions or anything coming from James Wan, like you don't hear a whole lot. Especially like the 2 movies we're going to be talking about this Friday that we both found fucking awesome that no one really talks about.
Well, and just a lot of movies that we've done on the show happen to be Australian based.
Like The Loved Ones we talked about. I mean, we haven't done a review on it yet, but Wormwood, you know, we've talked a lot about that.
Eventually.
But yeah, so
Maybe.
I feel like Australia is one of those hidden gems. The Australian horror genre is one of those hidden gems where it's like, oh, that was from Australia. I fucking love that movie. Like for me, it blew my mind about Saw. Insidious.
Yeah, I would love to start to see Australia get more of a positive stigma of its horror, like how France has theirs.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, you know, it's going to be going into something pretty.
Yeah, you know
shit.
what you're getting into.
Yeah, or like Japan even, because like even Japan's like really good with just like going over the top with very unique ideas for their horror. And so
And I really hope they, like we talked about earlier about evil koala bears and ostriches.
Yeah.
Like I would like to see more creature features coming out of Australia around those creatures. Like
Make it
that's what I
happen.
think.
Do it.
Just
Why
because
not?
like I think it'd be awesome.
Zombievers is a thing. So I mean, whatever at this point.
I know, giving me my Zom koala.
But Zamwala.
Zamwala.
Zamwala. I think it sounds a little cooler. Zamwala.
But yeah, man. So
Legends foretold of the Zamwala that one day they shall return.
so
They secretly hide in trees and tunnels under their own empire. I'm kind of mashing in their lore with the lore of the Scaven in Warhammer. See, they use chaos energy to get their eucalyptus leaves, right?
and then once they eat their eucalyptus leaf, it gives them great strength.
Yeah, it's great. They become beast men koala figures. They're just like these dudes, just like climbing.
And fucking chucking boomerangs.
Whoa! What makes you think that all Australians use boomerangs? Okay, no.
Yeah, it's like, it is a weapon.
I'm just saying.
It's a popular weapon.
And their koalas, think about it, it's going to be hard for them to use guns.
Yeah, they have tiny arms.
So they could still use boomerangs, just and then they could like put razor edges on the boomerangs or like make heat-seeking boomerangs. Now I'm just thinking of Ty the Tasmanian Tiger.
I was
that
just
video
imagining.
game.
Oh, really? I was just imagining Captain Boomerang, but just short and furry.
That's basically what Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is. That's really, like, did you ever play that game? Oh man, okay, it's gonna be a weird way to end up the show. But it was like one of the cooler type of like platformers that did not get a lot of attention because it came out like really late.
Yeah.
It just did not get it was very by the numbers. But you played as this Australian Tasmanian devil who uses boomerangs. And I forget like the main objective of the game, but like you actually unlock different types of boomerangs. Like you have fire element boomerangs, ice boomerangs, heat-seeking
cool.
boomerangs, exploding boomerangs, infinite boomerangs, boomerangs that ricochet. Like it was actually pretty well thought out. Like, and I was pretty impressed with it. I was like, wow, like no one's ever talking about this one.
I play it.
Like it's a very by the numbers platformer from back in the day. Like like it's definitely one of those if they decide to remake, I would probably get it.
Yeah.
Just because it was definitely, like I said, like a little underappreciated. I don't know if they're not remaking it just because it's a little like tongue in cheek with it being a Tasmanian, devil and whatnot. that has an Australian accent that uses boomerangs, so I don't. Maybe that's kind of an issue, but I don't know. That being said, you know what isn't an issue is liking and following us on Facebook. So you can do that. Just search us up Punk Rock Horror Podcast, or you can reach out to us on our Twitter and follow us there at official PRHP or.
On Instagram, Punk Rock Horror Podcast, hashtag PRHP Podcast.
And to all of everybody, by the way, who does listen to us, who is a horror creator, content creator in that facet, or bands, please know that we have different emails for you to reach out to us to. So if you are a band who's wanting to come on for an interview, please send all your promotional material, everything else, reach out to us on our band email, prhpbands@gmail.com. But if you are a horror creator who has a movie or short story or something like that, please reach out to us on our main email, punkrockhorrorpodcast@gmail.com. And for authors, again, that would be punkrockhorrorauthors@gmail.com. All those links will be in the episode notes below, so don't stress it too much. But yeah, thank you, ghouls, gals, for hanging out with us. Please check out our Patreon. Me and Cody have returned to Half Hour Power, so there's some great content for you there, and it's going to be coming out with some more and more and more, and it's just going to be worth your investment overall. Please check out our merch there as well. If you'd rather just go ahead and buy some merch from us and support us that way, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. And also, lastly, please again check out the charity that's going on the 22nd. Again, it's a live stream from our friends over at Heathens that are going to be doing this. It's called Heathens Helping Humanity. Again, they're raising money for St. Jude's Hospital. So please check it out. It'll be a 12-hour live stream, video games, fun, good times all around. So yeah. Thank you, ghouls, gals, creeps, and moons, again for hanging out with us and letting us talk about horror with you. And we shall make sure to do it again next time.
Aw, yeah.
Bye.
Bye.